Alright, so time to make a battery box. Oh, that's the battery. And this is the battery. So this is going to be in the van. Now, the story on this is going to be, I may or may not have said it once before. I'll say it again and I'll make it quick. Years ago, see, this doesn't make a difference which way I put it, so I'm going to have to. Years ago when I had my store, right about there, I used to have a full-size van. It was like those big passenger vans, but no seats and no windows. And I had a bench in the back. And I used to do a lot of repairs from the van. So, because of that, I used to there we go, have 3 Group 31 deep cycle batteries underneath the chassis of the van. And they charged up off the alternator. So the alternator is going to continue to charge. It works all the time anyway. It's always spinning, so it's just charging a little bit more, but it works the same. So at that point, and I also had a small generator up underneath the back of the van. So if I ever had to crank that over. Now it wasn't a big generator, by no means. It was big enough to charge the batteries if I needed to. Big enough to run a small electric heater if I needed it to. Or light up a bench and work on a 110 volt radio or whatever it was. So it was sufficient enough for what I needed it for. But the batteries at this point, I always needed the batteries, and because again, working on radios in the truck, 12 volt stuff, you need batteries. And I needed the amp hours. I didn't care too much about the cold crank. I need amp hours. I need batteries that are going to last. And they rate these on amp hours as well as crank. So depending on what you actually want to use it for, you try to find out the best for you. Where's the happy medium and what you want it for. But because of that, I've always been used to having more than one battery in my van. Now even the van out there, like I say, it's got the battery under the hood. The one that's under the hood is one size larger than the one that came with it because I wanted those amp hours. And it's still not a lot. It's only like 120. I think the one that was in there was like 100. But meanwhile, there's no room under the hood to put anything bigger. It's not like my big vans that I used to have where you got all kinds of room. Or a pickup truck. But meanwhile, I've got another battery, a Group 31 deep cycle, underneath the van in the back, underneath where the spare tire used to be. I made a metal case. And I hooked up the tire crank to raise and lower the spare tire to the case so I can lower it or crank it up, and then I got lock pins that lock it in. So I have the 2 batteries in the van, which is basically more than enough. But I do have that issue with the van, and again, sometimes it's easier just to try to find the issue, but because the issue isn't ongoing and it happens when it wants to, it could go twice in a week, it could go twice in a year. Whether or nothing has anything to do with it, I'm still trying to find out what it is. I thought it might have been the starter. I just replaced the starter. It wasn't the starter. So I have a spare starter. I think it might be the ignition. One day I turned the key off, but I didn't see the gauges disengage. The motor stopped running, but I didn't see the gauge disengage. So I had to shake the key, and everything went down. So maybe it's the ignition. So I have the ignition switch, but I haven't had a chance to put it in yet. Because it's cold out there, and I got to get down underneath the dash, and I'm just not in the mood to do that right now. And then it could be the door locks locking up. When you lock the door, it has the button. So at that point, there's a lot of little things. You call the dealer, and if it's not happening, they're not going to be able to find it. Well, so they tell you anyway. That's another whole story. You know, dealers. But at that point, I said, you know what? I'm just going to buy a bigger battery, and until I find the problem, I'm going to put it in the van. So what I'm going to do is put it in behind the driver's seat. I have plenty of room behind the driver's seat. So this is going to go in behind the driver's seat. Now why I'm making it out of this and not buying one of those plastic cases is because it is going to be in the van. Now I will put a weep hole through it so I have a drainage. Alright, and I have a little spot for air using the same weep hole at this point. But the reason for it being in a metal case with a metal top is if the battery does decide to catch, blow, fire, leak, whatever, this should keep it in, alright, and confined enough until I can get a chance to yank it out of there. Or at least put it out with an extinguisher or something. So that's why I want the metal case. If this wasn't going to be inside, well then I'd just put it in a regular battery box outside someplace. But it's going to be inside. There is room outside. It's just that I just can't get up under there right now. I'm not going to bother doing it. I'm not going to go nuts. Because this battery may not be there. Once I find the problem, if I ever find a problem, I'll take this battery out and I'll put it over there in my battery pack, or I'll put this one in the place of the back one. Or you always have a room for battery. So meanwhile, I got to cut this. This is going to be the bottom, and then I'll do the same thing for the sides, and then I got to do a top, and that's where we're at. So that's what's going on with this today. The antenna will wait a little bit. I have everything there. If I get this done in time and I stop talking, and stop wasting your time, I will start getting this done. So I'm going to do a little bit and I'll be right back. Perfect. Well, not perfect, but good. Fumble. Sorry, guys. Yeah, I didn't forget you. I know the camera's still on. Sorry, guys. That works just fine. I gotta open the door for a minute because I really haven't got any ventilation in here. The only time I seem to have a lot of ventilation is when I'm trying to keep heat in. Then there's always room for air to come in. But when I'm looking for ventilation, can't find it. Alright, so it's just tacked. I got to run a couple beads on it. I'm going to leave this end here and this end because that's going to be a hinged end. Maybe, I don't know yet. I still have to put the top. I got to make a top for it yet. But meanwhile, that should work. That don't look right. Well, that should be right though. Why isn't it? Huh. This end is a little bit bigger by like a quarter. And I'm not going to go nuts over a 1/4 inch. Yeah. Now if the battery fits in it, I'm not going to go crazy. I have room for my weep hole. Like I said, it's about a 1/4 inch off. But you know what? I don't care. Ugh. Okay. So, now it's time to put some more tack on it. Tack. Bead. Tack. Bead. Very good. they're back. I don't care for that one. Yeah, much better. So either I got to slow down a little bit or I got to juice up the power and the speed. I'm moving a little faster than what the Ark is doing. Not a big deal, but
SMS message from one son, Stephen Kathy. Bruce texted me last night also. He said he was texting you. still hot. You'd think I'd put gloves on. Alright, so that, I just want to do some on the outside. Yeah, it's hot. Gloves? Yeah, I got them. I do. Alright.